So once more, greetings, namaskar to the staff and students and professors. Uh, I said that first we'll go through the understanding of the theoretical basis of all this Vedanta and so on, and then we'll come to the practical. I still remember one question which Professor Rahul Garg told me about Ramachandran's book about somebody saying I'm God, and so I want to keep it to the end to deal with it. Last time we started with the Mandukya Upanishad, yes. I kind of tried to explain the meaning behind the sound of Om, A, U, and Ma, and how they represent the three states of consciousness common to all human beings: the waking state, the dream state, and the deep sleep state. And that state, which is not common to all human beings, but which can be understood and experienced if you put in a little bit of effort, which is called the Turiya. So we discussed that. I don't need to go back and recapitulate because we all know that we are awake, we dream, and we also sometimes sleep deeply without dreams. But a state called Turiya is not commonly experienced by most people. And the idea of Vedanta is that human beings would slowly, gradually, by and by, explore these three states of waking, dream, and deep sleep, and then arrive at the understanding of Turiya, what Turiya is. So, like I said in the introduction, the teachings of Vedanta have nothing to do with do's and don'ts and so on at the moment. We are going into the principal Upanishads. They basically delineate and show you the different forms of consciousness and how to go to the root of the consciousness, which is awareness. Look, you can't be conscious of anything unless you're aware that you exist first. When I wake up in the morning, the first thing that occurs to me is I am. And then the world is after that. Sometimes it is the world that wakes me up to this awareness. That's also possible. I hear the bird and say, I am in my bedroom. So I am. The first. So Turiya, we'll go into this again as we go along, has been described by the sages, by the rishis. When I say rishis, you don't have to necessarily give it a religious connotation. In the ancient times, rishis were the great people who explored the inner as today scientists explore the outer. Well, today scientists have again begun to explore the inner because there are many people who work on psychology, on neurology, and also there are some chemical engineers here. So, do you know, for instance, many of our moods are dictated by the chemicals flowing through the blood. And the switch for making them flow and the levels at which they flow is in the brain. There is a system in our body called the Endocrine System. They are ductless glands. They don't have any tubes or ducts. They're directly connected. Now, starting from the pituitary, which is the master gland, pineal, adrenal glands, and so on. There are many. Now, when I say, even in meditation, I'm not trying to reduce meditation into a chemical process, but it's a fact that when I say, I feel good, there's a goodness factor in me. This means that a little bit of serotonin and dopamine have now flowed into my blood, controlled by the pituitary, of course. When serotonin, which is the goodness factor, or dopamine flow into my bloodstream, then I feel good. I may even have some visions. sometimes pleasant visions. So you see, moods are very often controlled by chemicals, by the hormones. You know, the girls know that at certain point of their hormonal problem, they have some psychological problems, like they feel dull or they feel, you know that. So it is a question of the adjustment and balance of the hormones by the brain. Yoga says, the yogis say, that the balance of the hormones can be controlled internally by the yogi with the mind. This we'll examine later as we go into the teachings of yoga, Yoga Sutras. I'm going to do that. Right now, I'm going to start with another Upanishad. So we spoke about Turiya. You cannot define Turiya, like Professor Bhupinder said, many things can't be defined. But Turiya is the state of pure awareness. Now, in waking state, yes, there is awareness. I know I'm alive, I'm active, I'm seeing the world. In dream state also, I have awareness. I'm aware of the dreams that are going on. In deep sleep, I'm not aware because I'm fast asleep. There are not even dreams. But there is some personality or some individual surviving even in deep sleep who has experienced the happiness of not knowing anything at all and who wakes up and says, oh, I had a wonderful, blissful sleep. At that point, it is not known. The rishis say, the Upanishads say that in Turiya, you come to a state where under all conditions which are applicable to deep sleep can be applicable to you, but there is an additional thing that I am aware of it. I don't recognize anything outside, I don't recognize anything inside in deep sleep, but in Turiya, if there is a state called Turiya, at the moment speculative for us because we are exploring. Science is exploration, right? So, when there is awareness in a state similar to deep sleep, then the whole thing changes because the unconsciousness of deep sleep goes and there is a consciousness. It is not consciousness of this or that or low or high. It's a pure state of consciousness. This is called Turiya. Now, that state, according to the Upanishads, is where one discovers one's true identity. What am I? Who am I? Where do I start from? And so on. So, I'm going to deal with another Upanishad, which is not very short. Last time we did a Mandukya, which was only 12 verses. This is a little longer, called the Keno Upanishad. Keno Upanishad actually begins with this question. You know, the identity crisis, who am I, has been going on for 2000 years, maybe. It's not nothing new, except that now when you get angry and somebody tries to beat you, you say, who do you think you are? Problem is one doesn't know who we are. I may identify myself with a name or a family or and so on, or my profession, but really, what is my essence? Who am I? So, the Keno Upanishad, it comes from the Sama Veda. You know, there are 4 Vedas, and the Sama Veda is a very important Veda because all the music that we have in India, the origin is the Sama Veda. And Sama Veda is not chanted, it is sung. They say Sama Gayanti, singing of the Sama Veda. And unfortunately today, there are very few Sama Vedans left. Well, that's a different story altogether. So now, the Keno Upanishad. As usual, as all Upanishads, it starts with an invocation. Now what you should remember, that the invocation is not to some supreme God sitting up there or anything of that kind. It's an assurance and a repetition to make myself understand what I need most, how my mind can look after my body and mind, and so that I am fit enough to sit down and study the scriptures. So this particular invocation, even though I won't be using too much of Sanskrit because we will be wasting time on the Sanskrit and the translation and so on, so I will stick to translation. But I can't resist the temptation of doing the invocation. It's so beautiful. The invocation, the invocation in the Keno Upanishad, before it begins, is Apayantu mamangani vak pranas chakshutshotram mato balam indriyani cha sarvani. May my limbs grow vigorous. We all need this. Not asking somebody, asserting, assuring, repeating, may my limbs grow vigorous. Why? Because the one you address is your own true identity, which ultimately is seen in Turiya. What you should understand, the Upanishad thing, all strength, all energy, all identity, everything that is divine is in us, not outside. So this is an invocation to invoke that inner divinity and make it work to our advantage. May my limbs grow vigorous. May my speech grow vigorous. May my breath, eye, ear, as also my strength and all my senses. So this is when I say my indriyani cha sarvani, that means all my senses. So somewhere along there people think if you read the Upanishads, you forget about the senses. No. Unless your senses are really sensitive and strong, you cannot transcend them. What can an important man experience in life? Nothing. So you see it and you say, oh, this is it, and there's something beyond it. So then there is an, after saying this, it says, Sarvam Brahmo Upanishatam Maham Brahma Nirakuryam Ma Brahma Nirakarot Anirakaranam Astu Anirakaraname Astu. Which means all is the Brahman of the Upanishads. Now the Upanishads, as I had discussed last time, describe the ultimate reality, which is also our true identity, as the Brahman. I explained, Brahman is from the root Bruh, which means ever growing, ever expanding, not ending. It's somewhat like the ever expanding universe. You can't say the Brahman is finished, I have understood. Because the Upanishad, some other Upanishad, if you say you have understood, you have not understood. It's not a tongue twister. We'll discuss slowly all this. So, all is the Brahman of the Upanishads. May I never discard Brahman. May the Brahman never discard me. May there be no discarding. May there be no discarding of me. Then, Tat Atmani Nirateya Upanishatsu Dharmaste Maishantu Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Which means, let those truths, 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 which are set forth in the Upanishads, live in me, who am dedicated to the self, inner self. Many kinds of selves, inner self, upper self, lower self, myself. And then the last is, of course, like all the great scriptures in India, they end with Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om, peace, peace, peace. Ultimately, even if you discover everything, if there is no peace, there is no point. So the Keno Upanishad, this was the invocation. As I said, it is from the Sama Veda. The Sama Veda is a very important Veda. In fact, in the Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna talks about his Mahimas to Arjuna, it is among the immovables, I am the Himalayas. Among the mountains, I am Meru, and so on. When it comes to the Vedas, he says, among the Vedas, I am the Sama Veda, not even Rig Veda, which is the first Veda, of course. I'm just trying to say how important an Upanishad, the Keno Upanishad. Also, it's important because it's asked the same question which we have been asking for 2000 years. Kena. Who? or what? There's a little child behind Shurbi, went off. So my senses became very strong after chanting this mantra. So, Kene shitam patati prasitam manaha, kena prana prathama preti yuktaha, kene shitam vacham imam vedanti. I want only once I'm going to chant. After that we'll do just the translation. The sound of the chanting is so good that I am tempted. Sorry. Kene shitam patati prasitam manaha, kena prana prathama preti yuktaha, kene shitam vacham imam vadanti, chakshuchotram kaudevo yunakti. This is the first sloka, which means by whom or by what, you can say either. Willed, W-I-L-L-E-D, willed, and directed, does the mind light on its objects? Yeah. See, we think we are seeing something. I'm seeing you. It seems simple. There is no need of an explanation. But just look into it and see the whole process is so complicated. It's not so simple. Because I have my eyes, I can see and I think, oh, I'm seeing, so what is the big deal? By whom willed and directed does the mind light on its objects? What is it that directs the mind to see? Why does it want to see? What is it? Even if your eyes are closed, you may not see, but you are still seeing in your mind. The mind's eye is working. So, the question here asked in the Upanishad, look at this. This Upanishad is not giving you statements, it is asking you questions. Questioning was an important part of our tradition. Questioning, debates, samvad. In fact, there's an entire shastra called Tarka Shastra. The question is, when the mind chooses to look at something, or when the eye chooses to look at something goaded by the mind, what is it that wills the mind to look? It's a simple eye. Look carefully at this. Eye means what? Which eye? By whom commanded does life move, started moving in the first place? Kena prana prathama prayati yukta. Let me put it in a different way, translate it. What is the first impulse that created life? What is the first impulse that created a living being out of chemicals? What is the first impulse that arranged the chemicals, the organic chemicals into the double helix or genes? Does it happen automatically, or is there something so accurately done? At whose will do we utter speech? When we utter speech, what is this is prompting us to utter the speech? We can also remain silent. What is it that prompting us to not utter speech? You can ask the other way also. And Chakshushrotram Kaudevo Yunakti. What is the deity that sits and sees when I say I see? And what is it that hears when I say I hear? We're trying to find out the identity, essential identity of the conscious entity who looks at objects, reacts, hears, sees. We think, no, this is a simple, we just see. No. Let's simply take the question of sight. I'm sitting here. I see many of you on the screen, right? But even though all your images are falling in the lens of my eyes, the convex lens, I register only those who I put my mind on. It's there. But I can see only one of you. If I am looking at Professor James Gomez, I cannot look at the others. They are all blurred. Why? Because the eye is focused on one side. I can see only one thing at a time. Now, the mind also can actually see only one thing at a time. But it sees so many things at a time, one by one, that it looks like it's connected in a chain. Actually, it's only one thing at a time. It's like the movie film. Not now. Now it's all digital. Olden days, if you have to raise your hand, you had a number of frames in which one is like this, like this, like this, like this, like that. And then you are raised. When it is played at a particular speed, the reel, then you see it as one action. In the same way, the mind can, and the eye both, can see only one thing at a time. Focus, full attention. Otherwise it can see from the periphery, but if I want to see Professor Rahul Garg, then I have to fix my attention there. Then if I shift down, then it's gone. Although the image is falling because there is light there and the lenses are there. But there is the particular optic center, which is in the brain, which says, okay, here, this is what I am seeing now. The Rishi is saying even for that to operate, there is another consciousness which is essential for it to operate. Your eyes can be open and you can be dead, but you can see nothing. But they will say, now the brain has died, so we'll come to that slowly. So, by whom willed and directed does the mind light on its objects? By whom commanded what was the first impulse of life? What was the first living creature? Who created? What happened? Where was the impulse from? When I utter speech, who is it that is making me talk? Is it my brain? These are questions looked at. Or is it my mind? As of now, we know only the brain. We don't know any mind. Can't find the mind anywhere except in the brain. I don't totally agree with it at the moment, let's say. And what is it? Who is the identity that says I hear? And who is the identity that says I see? Now the thing is, in the second sloka, something funny happens. You would think that the Rishi is trying to take us for a ride. Instead of trying to explain and answer the first sloka, see, normally if you ask a question, in what do you do in so-called scientific circles, like you try to answer the question. Now, instead of trying to answer the question directly, well, if it was something concrete, this could have been done. But this identity, the I that is behind everything, the consciousness which is aware of all that's happening, cannot be so easily explained of, seen, or... I liked what Professor Bhupinder started with, saying that it seems intangible. I don't know how to catch this, but there's something going on. Sufficient. So, you start with sufficient. And in the end, again, it's the same thing. You can't grasp it. In fact, this Upanishad says that it cannot be grasped. Then what are we studying? Why are we? Let's go into this. So, instead of explaining who, which was asked before, the second sloka, I can't resist this sloka because Sanskrit is clearer than English actually. But unfortunately, if people don't know Sanskrit today, that's a different story. But actually, if I one Sanskrit word, you might need a few English words to translate, describe. So give me a little time. So answer to the first question is very confusing. Not confusing, it's not direct. And the answer is Shrotrasya Shrotram Manaso Mana Yat Vajo Khavajam Sahu Pranasya Prana Chakshushat Chakshuradimuchya Dhira Pratyasma Logat Amrata Bhavanti. That means because, says the Rishi, it is that which is the ear of the ear, the mind of the mind. See, are they trying to fool us? The speech of the speech, the breath of the breath, the eye of the eye, which the wise, the great dhira, wise are also called dhira because it needs a lot of courage to be wise. Fearlessness is one of the elements of wisdom. So here, the wise are called dhiras. Understanding this, which is the ear of the ear and the eye of the, and so on. The dhiras of ancient times, giving up what? Their wrong notions of self-sufficiency. And departing from this world, became immortal. Which means, when you depart from the world, generally what is the condition of a human being? Generally it's suffering, unless you are unconscious. You don't want to leave things. Before that I want to tell you a little story because it's like a college class, so nice to have some story. You must have heard of Swami Chinmayananda. There's a lot of Chinmaya missions around. Swami Chinmayananda. So, when Swami Chinmayananda was a young man, he was studying Vedanta with a great teacher called Tapovan Maharaj, Tapovan Swami in Uttarkashi. So he was teaching him precisely this Upanishad, the Keno Upanishad. And then when this chapter came, Swami Chinmayananda was a very brainy, kind of critical man. He went to the Himalayas basically to expose the sadhus living in ashrams when he was a reporter with the Times of India. And he ended up becoming a Swami himself after some time. So, when Swami Chinmayananda heard this, you're trying to explain by whom, build, who are you and all, then you say it's the eye of the eye and the ear of the ear. So he said, but what is this? This is not an answer. You say eye of the eye, ear of the ear. What is it actually? This is what I want to know. So, in Sanskrit, there is a term called upadi, vehicle, method. So, Tapovan Maharaj didn't answer him. He told him, go and get some water from the Ganga and come to drink. His kutir was near the Ganga. It's still there. It's called Tapovan Kutir. So he went with a kamandalu and filled the water and came back, and Tapovan Maharaj was furious. Swamiji Chinmayananda told me the story himself. He was furious. He said, who asked you to bring the vessel? What do you mean, Swamiji, you wanted water? Yeah, but how did I ask for water? Did I ask you for the vehicle? No, but I can't carry water with... So he said, the second shloka is the upadi to find out what is the essence. So don't get upset. They're not trying to fool you. Eye of the eye, ear of the ear. You need, for the mind which is generally limited, it needs limited upadis to understand even the unlimited. So, I was talking about the last. Pratyasma logat amrita bhavanti. So these wise who have understood this, the essence of the real identity of who I am, depart from the world and enjoy and are never born again. which means they are free of all attachments and everything that is in this world. They have seen it through and they are going happily, like saying, bye bye, I'm going on the train to Lucknow. Not Lucknow, but Mussoorie, let's say. So, okay. Now the third sloka, all this is food for thought. Think carefully. We are trying to look at something so subtle that words cannot describe it. We started with this today by Professor Bhupinder saying that it is not this is exactly what the Upanishad is saying. Yes, sir, it is not graspable, but we need to look at it. So you have to look at it very carefully and subtly. It's the operation of this exploration is even more subtle than the nimble fingers of the brain surgeon, neurosurgeon. And a neurosurgeon should know about the brain, but he should also be a superb artist. Otherwise, holding somebody's brain in his hands. One little miss, and when we wake up, instead of talking like human beings, we might bleat like goats. So, the third sloka says, after saying this, eye of the eye, ear of the ear, and so on, it says that essence which you are seeking, which is the beginning of everything, from which everything came, and which is the real witness of all that happens in this world, and knowing which one departs peacefully. That we can't find it. Then what is the point? The third sloka says, na tatra chakshur gacchati, na vak gacchati, no mana, na vidmo, na vijanimo, yathetat anushishyat. The teacher who is teaching this, it's interesting. Upanishads are taught by the rishis. You can't find a byline anywhere. No rishi wants to sign written by. Now, even before our book is complete, we want to write by who. They have finished their identity. They don't want to write. They simply say the teacher, that's all. Now, the third sloka says, there, the essence, the who which we are seeking, basically it is to confuse us totally so that we stop trying to tinker with our little brains. I mean, that is free, then you probably see something. Anyway, so there the eye does not go, nor does the speech, nor the mind. And if the mind also doesn't go, then what do? We have only one instrument, the mind. And the teacher is saying, we know not, being very humble and nice, we know not, we don't understand how I can teach this to you. So, it's a big question. We'll try. We will all sit together and learn, rather my teaching you. Though it says, na tatra chakshur gacchati, na vak gacchati, no mana. There the eye cannot reach. Words cannot describe. Even the mind cannot reach. Mind as we know it right now, okay? The mind cannot reach. Then, na vidmo na vijanimo yathaitat. I don't understand how I am going to teach this to you. It's a big problem. The fourth sloka says, that which you are seeking is not an ordinary thing which you go to the mall and buy it. It can't be found in books. But why are we reading the Upanishads? I want to hark back to something. Leaving this Upanishad here, is another principal Upanishad called the Mundaka Operation. Basically, the Mundaka Upanishad means Upanishads meant for the shaven-headed, and that's what it literally means. I think it means people who are ready to shed their egos. The hair is a big ego, you know. Every morning I check this to see if it's there still. So, in this Upanishad, it's interesting. In the third sloka, Saunaka, one of the characters here. Saunaka, the great householder, which means, now when you say, in the West, if you say householder, people are confused. What is a household? Do you hold the house? It means grihastha, family. A family man, a married rishi, which means the Upanishads are not meant only for sannyasins. Keep this in mind. Because Saunaka, the great householder, duly approached Angirasa, the great rishi, and asked him this very important question. What was the question he asked? Kasminno bhagavo vijñāte sarvamidam vijñātam bhavati iti. Saunaka went and asked Angirasa, Venerable Sir, through that being known, is there something which when known, all this becomes known? There's nothing unknown. And Angirasa answers him. Employs the same ploy as all the rishis instead of going directly into it. It's difficult to go, it's somewhat like quantum. So you can't put black and white there. Many grey areas. So Angirasa says, there are two kinds of knowledge. He's asking, is there that knowledge by which when known everything else is known? Nothing remains unknown. He says, yes, but there are two kinds of knowledge. The higher knowledge, Paravidya, and the lower knowledge, Aparavidya. So, declare those who know the Brahman. So Saunaka says, so what is the lower knowledge? So I can understand that, eliminate it and go to the higher knowledge, right? Now this is very funny. Angirasa gives a list of lower knowledge. You will be shocked. Tatra para Rigvedo Yajurvedaha Sama Veda Tharvana Veda Siksha Kalpo Vyakaranam Niruktam Chando Jyotisham Iti Atha Aparayu Vidyaha. Rigveda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, Jyotisha, mathematics, all including science, they are all lower knowledge. Now, why are we reading the Upanishad? They are part of the Vedas. So, Angirasa says, then what is higher knowledge, sir? Saunaka. He says, that by which the truth is known. Now the question is, it's not that you should not be reading the Vedas or the Upanishad, because if you don't, you wouldn't even know this, right? It means, if they don't lead us to the truth, then they are still lower knowledge. Which means, if I say I know the Rig Veda by heart, you haven't touched the truth. That's what it means. Not that you shouldn't read. Anything that leads you to the essential essence of truth, that alone is the true knowledge, as explained in the Mundaka Upanishad. And the same Upanishad makes another statement which one might think generally comes from Shakespeare. Shakespeare has used it, but it is 2000 years old. It's also used in the at least 1000 years, let's say. Let's not go into the controversy of 1000 years, which is the Upanishad. Talking about those who have studied all the scriptures and sciences and Vedas and everything and think that they have found the truth and therefore set themselves up to lead others to the truth. The Upanishad says such people are like andhe naiva niyamana yat andaha, the blind leading the blind. Okay, so I said all this to make it a little simpler to understand the fourth sloka which comes. And the fourth sloka is Anya devatat vititat adhova vititat adhi idi shushrama purvesham yanastat vyaja chakshire, which means that which we are seeking, where we started from, the essence of everything, the witness, the one who I actually am. Not the personality which I have created for myself, but who I actually am, that indeed it is other than what is known. So it can't be known. It is other than what is known, but it is above the unknown. Just because the Rishi said that it is other than that which is known, it doesn't mean that it does not exist. Other than that which is not known, unknown. And then he quickly adds, Iti shushruma purvesham yunastat vyaja chakshire. I don't know. This is what we have heard from the ancients who explained it to us. Now, how innocent, how clear, how unassuming is this real search for the truth? He's not saying it is so, I know it. It is that which is other than the known. That means everything that is known through the senses. Right? And the Upanishad said that it can't be known. Tatra chakshu gacchati na vak gacchati no mana. It can't be known. So it is other than the known. But that doesn't mean because it is other than that which is known by the ordinary mind, it does not exist. So he says, it is also not which is unknown. It is there. So the ancients have said. Now here is another, the fifth sloka, there is a sweeping statement. Not to be followed, because if you don't do this at home, people may think you have become an atheist or something. So, but this is the Upanishad, this is Shruti. The fifth sloka says, Yad vachana, you have to carefully listen. Huh? Yad vachana abhyutitam yana vag abhyutyate. That which cannot be expressed by speech. Words cannot describe it. Yana vag abhyutyate. But because of which one is able to form words and express speech. Tadeva brahmatvam vidvi, understand, O student, that is the real truth, the Brahman. Nedam yad idam upasate, nothing that you worship here. No, nothing that you worship here need not mean deities only. It also means the ego that we worship ourselves. And the next set of slokas is a repetition of the same, the fifth in different forms. And manasa, that which the mind cannot reach, but because of which the mind has the capacity to function. Understand that is the truth, nothing that you worship here, is repeated many times, using different organs of speech, mind, etc., etc. So, basically, what the Upanishad is trying to establish, or rather make us explore, I don't think it's trying to establish, it's trying to make us explore, that the true me, which is the root of my consciousness, my essence, is something which can't even say experienced, is something which reveals itself when I have ruled out all other approaches to it. I don't know. Tomorrow we are going to do another Upanishad, so maybe we can clarify with that what they're trying to say. Let me just make a statement on this. Tomorrow we'll do the Ishavasya. Statement is Ishavasya Upanishad. It's nothing to do with any foundations that exist. It's an ancient Upanishad, 1,000 years old. Normally, you are in Delhi, in the IIT, and I am sitting in Madinapalli. And if I have to reach you, I have to travel. There's a linear path towards you. Yeah, I have to. But what happens when the thing that one is looking for is here? How do we travel to something which is already here? You can't. When all traveling ceases, when all grasping comes to an end, then it is. You can't go there. When all going stops, when the mind's understanding perfectly, what the Rishi is trying to do is confuse us thoroughly so that we understand this clearly. That nothing that we do, including standing on our head with our, I do asanas every day, I'm not saying that, with your legs up, can take you there. No circus can take us there. In that case, what do we do? Do nothing. And nothing is not nothing, it is no thing. Shunya doesn't mean nothing. The concept of shunya in mathematics is not nothing. So knowing that nothing, it can't be reached anyway, you stop reaching and then do nothing. In that, the mind, which is then free of all the vrittis of the chitta. Or as Patanjali defined yoga, yoga is chitta vritti nirodha. When we come to the practical side, when all movement of the mind has stopped and it has come back like in one Upanishad, it's like the tortoise pulling all its limbs into the shell. Then one sees that what we were looking for is already here. The one who is looking is himself the thing which he is looking for. It's funny, but sorry. All that we look for is only for this self. And all that you are looking for is already there in the self. I will go into it in the next case, 1 hour now, almost. So we have a half an hour question answer, discussion session. So if you have any questions, then we can discuss it for today's, where we can interact. Don't ask me what is the Brahman.
Okay, may I, Shyam?
Yes.
So, first of all, again, you have the ability to take us through that process up and down, and the element of wonder comes, and within that, I kind of come back out of pure selfishness, where to put effort. The question about Buddhism and about Vedanta, and one light that seemed to be there today was the difference in timing. So Buddhism emerging earlier than the Upanishads.
No, no, no.
Most recent.
Sir, Buddhism did not emerge earlier than the Upanishads.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you know,
It's the
Buddhist,
reverse.
it's the reverse. But actually, the one of the greatest expositors of Vedanta, that is Adi Shankara. So that means much before him, the Vedas, Upanishads have existed. He was post-Buddhist. He came after the Buddha. That is correct.
Okay.
One of the major expositors of the Upanishads, because of whom we today have the commentaries and so on, Shankara Bhagavad Pada, Adi Shankara, he came post-Buddha. In this context, I would also like to point out to you that the Yogacara texts of the Buddhists predate Patanjali's Yoga Sutras as we have it now. Predate.
Okay.
So they have also made a very good study of it. Now I want to tell you something interesting. When Adi Shankara Bhagavad Pad went to Banaras in his travels, he traveled from Kerala and went all the way to Kedarnath. When he went to, we touched upon this little bit in the first session about Gaudapada, his guru's guru, teacher's teacher, who wrote the commentary on the Mandukya Upanishad. Some people think he was a Buddhist because it is so close to the Buddhist teachings. Now, when Shankara was teaching the Upanishads in Vanaras, in Varanasi, the orthodoxy, the people who are only involved in rituals and so on, they were very worried because here is a man who comes and there is no amount of ceremonies will help you to reach there. He says you have to have Viveka and Vairagya. Without that, you cannot figure this out. Viveka meaning discrimination and Vairagya mean, So when he was talking, they were worried because they were threatened. And in fact, they called him a Prachanna Bhautika, which means a Buddhist in disguise. So that means the teachings of Buddhism are very old. There's no question about that. But they don't go before the Upanishads because Upanishads are part of the Vedas. And Vedas are very ancient, But the teachings are so close. The Shunyata, which the Buddhist teachings discuss, is very close to the Brahman of the Upanishads. There are two terms, except that the Vedantists would prefer to call it Purna, completeness, while the Buddhist terminology is Shunya. However, in Gaudapada's translation and commentary on the Mandukya Upanishad, in many places Shunya, the word is also mentioned. Because Shunya is not nothing. If it is nothing, this everything could not have emerged from it. It is that from which everything comes and goes back. It's no thing.
Stillness, perhaps a word which can come a little closer to.
Yes. So this is why the mind can become still only when it stops reaching out, because it knows it's futile to reach out.
Yeah, but today my experience was when you were starting the class, when you chanted the verse, the first verse, it was as if that had the power to create something. Like when you're empowering your senses, sharpening your senses, and that somehow plays a very positive and I could say more enchanting role in this process. And you are actually empowering yourself by your own, and that seems to be something coming out of a stillness.
That is why chanting is always enchanting.
That's what. So that was a good, I mean, a big takeaway from today's class, and how much power it has that out of I mean, out of nothing. Like we just work together and you create something and it is rejuvenating. It's kind of bringing power.
Right.
So I again acknowledge you.
Thank you, sir.
May I now request Vishwajit to ask his question? Vishwajit has a question. So,
Yes, sir.
go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Hello, namaste, sir. So
Yes,
in the second
Vishwajit, I
sloka,
want to see you. Ah, I've seen you. Okay.
in the second sloka in the Upanishad, it was saying that the people who have gone past this false notion of that it can be known through the senses, they have become immortal. So is it it is implicitly implying that there is a concept of existence beyond death? So can you elaborate on that?
Um, when you say immortal, which means it is neither talking about a state beyond death, it's rather talking about the understanding that there is an element in us, all of us, which doesn't die with the death of the body. Whether it goes somewhere, that is not discussed here. What is trying to say, immortal, Amrita is the word used. Amrita bhavanti. They reach Amrita, immortality. Now, Amrit, you know what is Amrit, no? In the temple, you get prasad. Amrit is mixed with ghee and all. That is one Amrit. Amrit, the root meaning of the word Amrit is deathlessness. So basically, it means that you realize that there is an element in us which is our true identity, which does not die when the body dies. Now, it can still have birth, coming, going, etc., if it still has desires. When one has understood the absolute, then there is no other desire left. All joys have been experienced. Therefore, there is no point in coming back and do what? So it's freed. That's what it means.
So, like existing beyond the body, I understand that many things exist, like the atoms and all the molecules are existing. But what I mean to ask is, when we say that we are existing, we really mean about the memory and the awareness that we have about this life. Does that exist beyond the body or not?
No. No, it exists for most people beyond the body in the subtle realms of existence. But in a person who has understood the true reality, all these things don't matter. They're all gone. They are merged back into the absolute.
So, for other people, like they will take rebirth.
Of course, because look, if you have any desire and if you believe in rebirth, if you have any desire, you are bound to come back because the desires are not fulfilled. Otherwise, what will pull us back?
So,
When
that would suggest that there are some physical mechanism through which our memory would be like stored beyond our brains.
Of course. But when the body is dead, the brain is dead, right? The brain is dead, where will you store the memory? That means if memories are still stored, they are not stored in the brain. They are stored in the brain only as long as we are alive. Here, on this earth. It's like a computer. All memories are stored here. Huh. But when the computer is dead, where will you store the memory? So it must be stored somewhere else, which is not the physical body. Such a body is called a Shushma Sharira, a subtle body. Let's not go too deep into this now, because then it's a different subject altogether. And you have no proof, so.
Hmm. But people do seem to have experienced it.
Yes, yes. I know it, but I can't put it in a test tube and prove it to you, unfortunately.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
thank you. Put for thought. Yes, ma'am.
So, Prashant, you wanted to ask something, right?
Yes, ma'am. Uh, so I have a question. regarding the creation of this universe, why do we all have to exist? Why can't there be just nothing as it was before? We have been told that because of the wish of Lord Brahma, he wished for creation, and Lord Shiva, he granted the boon. And after that, the creation has been going on. And all those things of karma and rebirth cycle, we have to be reborn, and we are not getting the moksha. That is, we are not getting back to the God. What is the purpose of creation? Why did Lord Brahma wish for creation?
That we have to address to Brahma. I can't tell you. But the fact is that there is creation and we are existing and we are bound. That's understood, right?
Yes.
So, why there was one child, who asked the parents, Dad, Mom, do you love me? Love me very much? Yes, we love you very much. Then why didn't you invite me for your wedding? How can you invite the child for a wedding, even though you love the child? So your question is somewhat similar to that. We don't know what happened at that point, but the child is there now, alive, and is trying to figure out how to be free. So, we find that we are bound and we find that we want to be free. So, forget about that. Why it started, many things we can't ask why gravity came into existence. But gravity is there, and gravity being there, we need to work on how to cooperate with gravity. If you don't, we will fall down, right? The same way, in this world there are many circumstances. Some people are very happy, they think they are very happy until some sorrow comes. When sorrow comes, then they say, oh my God, now how do you get out of this? That begins the search. Is there only this life? Is there some other life? All these questions come only when we have sorrow and misunderstanding and discontent and dissatisfaction, which is existing. We don't have to go and find out why it happened or whether Brahma made it at all or it happened by itself. That's a different story. Sankhya says there is no creator. Everything happens through chemical reactions. Sankhya philosophy. But they acknowledge that the human being has a mind and he wants to be free. So the whole sadhana is meant to free oneself. So, let me tell you one more example. Somebody went to a mango garden to eat mangoes, okay? Some unknown person shot an arrow. It hit him in the heart here. He fell down, right? Now, he's in pain, and if you don't remove the arrow, he's going to die. Yeah? Instead of finding out how to remove it, will the man lie down there and ask the question, who shot this arrow? Where did it come from? So, by the time he finishes the answers to that, he'll be dead. And to understand the answer, you have to be alive. So, when you see the world and see its problems and difficulties and you want to try to find out, is there a way to get out of it? Because when you get out of it, then you may be able to find out who the hunter was who shot the arrow. Not before that. I hope you know what I'm trying to say. So, in the Shastras, different methods and practices and sadhanas have been prescribed for people to be free of the pain and the sorrow. If one hasn't felt the pain and sorrow till now, then it's okay. Carry on with life till it happens. And when it happens, you seriously begin to think, how do I get out of this? That's one side. The other is, there are some people who are scientifically minded who wants to explore and find out what is behind all this. Like you said, why has Brahma created all? Legitimate question, I agree. So, then you should start exploring, because at the moment our brain is so limited that it cannot even answer these infinite questions because it is so finite. So we need to find out, is there a way to expand our mind and expand our consciousness? to find out answers to universal questions. I think that should be the starting point. It's a research, of course. You're an IIT student, just as you do any other research. Start with that. Is there some way I can expand my mind, move out of my limited, conditioned mind, so that I have access to knowledge which will give me answers to these questions about creation and so on? Because even if I give you an answer, that is my answer, you may reject it, you may accept it. Right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Prashant.
Yes, sir.
Think about this, what I said.
Okay, sir.
Good question.
Thank you, sir. We have Ankit next.
Mm-hmm.
Pranam Guruji.
Yeah, Ankit.
So Guruji, so when the class start, you have just describe a statement from the Upanishad. Unless your senses are sensitive and strong, you can't transcend them. Like,
Absolutely.
so, what factors make my senses weak, and what are the ways to overcome those factors? My
Not only the senses, also your limbs and your body and your health, everything is important. May my limbs grow vigorous, my speech, my breath, my eye, my ear, and also all my senses. So now we come to the practical. What you asked is a very practical question. Now that is the science of yoga. The science of yoga is what way we should live, what food we should eat, how much we should eat, what should we do to keep our body and mind healthy, and the intelligence sharp. You see, and the most intelligent person very soon realizes the limitations of his or her intellect. The idiot cannot understand. The most intelligent person soon understands the limitations of his intellect. Therefore, the Gayatri mantra is chanted. All that you are asking for in the Gayatri mantra is Dhyo yona prachodayat. May my intelligence be stimulated. So, to have an intelligent mind, you need to eat the right food, you need to have the right exercise, you need to keep the mind exercised through reading and understanding the text. You should, so your body, mind, all of them should be kept in perfect order. Then only your senses can also be in perfect order. So the whole science of yoga, especially the sadhana pada, or what is to be done as sadhana, in the second part of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, is important to know how to lead your life. Let me tell you, we can't go through the whole thing, but if you want to single sentence, it simply means no excesses. Don't do too much. The Gita, Krishna describes yoga to Arjuna and says, this yoga is not for him who eats too much or eats too little, sleeps too much or sleeps too little, which means in everything there has to be a moderation. This is the first yama niyama to be followed, moderation. And then exercise, which is why asanas are prescribed. Need not necessarily be asanas. You can also do other exercises. Yes.
so
Yes,
like
Ankit.
I am so Guruji, like I am a student, I am a research scholar. So as you
Right.
said, uh, there should be a like balance. Do not do
Yeah.
anything
Right.
in the studies part also. I should not do like this much, or I should do this much amount of studies only, or not much amount of.
the it is not the question of how much study that you do, with how much attention that you study. That is more important. If you give complete attention, you may not have to spend a lot of time in study.
Yeah. Equally. Thank you.
Thank you, Ankit.
Thank you, sir. We have Gopika
Mm-hmm.
question.
Yes, ma'am.
From what I've gathered in this discussion is that it is desirable to be freed from the cycle of birth and death, and that is possible by getting rid of these desires. So, how is it possible to get rid of desires?
No. I think you got it a little bit. Okay, you're right in one way. The whole thrust of today's talk or today's discussion, which is of course from the Upanishad, is how to find one's true identity. Who am I? That was the question. How do I find out who I actually am? I Gopika? Yes, I was named Gopika by my parents. But then, like all human beings, you're a girl and you're at a certain age and you have a personality, right? That's fine. The question was, behind this personality, what is the essence of your being? What do you mean by what is your reality? Externally, yes. Tomorrow, if you may take off your glasses and look different, but still you're the same. The question here is, what is my essence? What is my consciousness? When I go to sleep, what remains in me? When I am awake, what is it that makes me think? These are the questions. Yes, the rishis have said that since the mind is scattered and is always running after desires, I'm not saying there shouldn't be desires. There are desires, it's fine. But when the mind keeps on going one desire after another, then it doesn't get the capacity to relax and go within and figure out what my true identity is. Which is why they say that you should free yourself. And there are ways and means by which you can change your desire to find the truth and make it the most powerful desire. Then other desires will become not so important to you. Don't try to artificially kill your desires. This will not work. In fact, if you try to kill your desires artificially, it might end up in a psychotic condition. So, one should not attempt to do that. What one should do is try to find out one's true identity. What am I really? Am I this personality, or is there a pure consciousness in me, which is also in me and you, both? When you go on this exploration, you might require to cut off some things and not think too much about other things that keep bothering you. That's what is meant by elimination. And then when you find it, then you are again free to go out into the world, but then you will be so intelligent that you will not allow the desires to affect your life. It's not that you should not have, don't let it affect your life. That's all there is to it. In this world, when you live, you will have desires. Sometimes do you feel like eating a pizza? That's also a desire. You can't say if you have to find the truth, you should stop eating pizzas. No, I don't believe that. But you must know that there are things more important than a pizza. That's what I'm talking about. You know what I mean?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So basically, what you have said is that wanting to get rid of desires is in itself a desire, right? So you can't really get rid of.
Yeah, so you have to look at it carefully and see the how and why of these things. Don't jump into this. I know people who say, oh, I'm going to become a sannyas, I'm going to meditate all the time and find God, I must cut off all desires. 6 days it's possible. The 7th day, all your desires come back full force.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Or if you still try very hard artificially, you get into different psychosis. then we had to go to a psychiatrist. All these things are so. Therefore, I am saying you look at your desires and see what is preventing me from going beyond my little mind in which I am enclosed, and work on it gradually, step by step, without too much extremities. This is the way. So that's why it's called the middle path.
Thank you, sir. So we have,
Welcome.
I think, time for one quick question. Manu can be next.
Probably one question.
Yeah,
Yes.
one last question, right?
Hello, sir. Good evening, sir.
Yeah, Manu. You have a nice name, Manu Brahmi. Yeah.
Sir, is the immortal entity beyond energy? Since science says that energy is conserved, neither created nor destroyed. So where does this immortal entity, the Shunya we are talking about, stands in the energy of existence? Thank you, sir.
Let me tell you this, Manu, that if energy can neither be created nor destroyed, and if everything is energy, your true inner self is the essence of all energy. It can, therefore, it stands to reason that it was never created nor will it be destroyed. But our individual selves that we live with are always being born and dying. So it looks like they're being destroyed. So we are seeking that infinite essence which, like energy, can neither be created nor destroyed, which always exists. When one understands and finds this, then the Rishi says you have attained immortality. Why? The meaning of the word immortality is you will never die, which means what? You are never born. So it's actually, there is a parallel thing to physics and understanding of the self. It's not two different things. In fact, the word energy in ancient scriptures is called Shakti. And the ultimate energy is called Parashakti. Right. So this ultimate energy is truly our inner self. Only the physicists may not agree with this, but it is our inner self which neither can be created nor can be destroyed. When Krishna says in the Gita to Arjuna, he says, Arjuna, what are you afraid of dying? Because the soul is neither created nor does it die. Exactly like what you said, the example of energy, it's neither created nor can it be destroyed. So, but I identify myself with a personality and a body which is created and therefore will be destroyed. What the Rishi of the Upanishads is seeking is that element in us, the essence in us, which is always there, which is neither created nor destroyed, which is eternal. This is what they are seeking. So you're right, that example is very nice, but it is not the same, but very similar to what you asked.
Yes, sir.
So can we wind up now?
Yes, I think we are done with all the questions. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Thank you,
Thank you.
students,
Thank you.
all of you, madam. Thank you very much. Namaskar. Om Shanti Shanti.